All right, guys, let's talk about the 2021 PopSugar Challenge. Or not. We don't have to. Okay. So your girl failed. Failed hard. And I want to give a little bit of explanation for this because I do feel like there is a little bit of a justification here, even if that justification is minor. So I read 144 books in 2021. So that should mean that I at least touched a book that should fit every prompt, right? No, I didn't. I did not. And that says something about the 2021 PopSugar Challenge. It was very pointed, very directed at a specific genre. And that's the one genre I don't read. So I was kind of disappointed with the PopSugar Challenge this year, or 2021, so last year. But I was getting ticked off because there were not a whole lot of universal prompts on the PopSugar Challenge for last year. And so I kind of quit. I did a revamp of it about midway through the year and was like, I have to do a refocus because all of these contemporary books, I'm just not going to read them. I'm not going to enjoy them. And it turns out I didn't enjoy them, and I didn't enjoy my reading while I was attempting to do the PopSugar Challenge. So all that to say, I did actually fulfill 40 of the prompts. And we will go through this quickly. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time because obviously I didn't finish, I failed. But I want to talk about the books that I did read and why some of these prompts didn't work for me. So the first prompt was a book published in 2021, and I read H.M. Long's Hall of Smoke. I loved that book. I thought it was really good. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. And I'm so looking forward to the next book in the series. It should be coming out pretty soon. So I will be reading the next one. An Afrofuturist book. I read Binti by Nydia Okorafor. And it was okay. It was okay. I really wish it would have been a little bit more fleshed out. I know it's a short story, and I know that there is a continuation of it. I actually have the bind up of the trilogy of short stories, but I wasn't impressed with it. There was nothing really great about it. I did like some of the cultural aspects of it, which I guess is the point of an Afrofuturist book, but I wasn't involved in the sci-fi of it. There was nothing else that was pulling me in. And so while I did like that aspect of it, I don't even know if I'm going to continue with the trilogy, even though I have the bind up. Heart, Diamond, Club, or Spade on the cover. I read Heartless by Marissa Meyer. You guys know I'm a bit of a sucker for retelling, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I really like hearing the villain's POV. That's always super fun for me. And I really love the villain origin stories. Like, you get to see what happened to make them the way that they are. I have no shame in liking this trope or YA. So there you go. An author who shares my zodiac sign. I loved Heartless, but Marissa Meyer, you let me down with Gilded. I hated this book. No, yeah, I did. So Gilded is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. Marissa Meyer is kind of infamous for retellings, and it was dull. I could not handle how boring this book was. And let me say, And I know I use boring a lot when something is slow, but no, this was boring. This wasn't just slow, this was boring. And it was repetitive. I wasn't sucked into the world, and I didn't care that she was in constant danger, which should be something I care about, right? I did not. I think I gave this book 2 stars. Either that or I marked it as a DNF, even though I did finish the story because I didn't want to rate it, but I think I gave it 2 stars. Dark Academia, A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I did enjoy this story. However, I don't think that I'm going to continue with this series. I go back and forth on this quite often. It's YA, it's typical YA. There's nothing great about it. It's fun. And I'm not drawn to the characters or the world. Like, it's an interesting concept, but I don't care enough to invest in the rest of the series. If that Gem, Mineral, or Rock in the title, I read Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I did not really like it. And I think that had to do with the audio narrator. The audio narrator was pretty bad. It made it hard to like the book. There were definitely aspects of it that I enjoyed. And, you know, death being a character is one of those things. So, MC works at current or dream job. I took liberties with this one because I'm obsessed with thieves and assassins in books. So I just said Among Thieves by M.J. Kuhn, which is a book I adored. I loved that book so much. So fast-paced, snarky characters. I just enjoyed the heck out of it. There's a reason I like Thieves and Assassins, and it is the general pacing of the books and the characters that are generally involved in thieving and assassinating. I love those types of characters. So M.J. Kuhn's Among Thieves is probably one of my favorite books of last year. And even though it didn't make a top 10 or anything like that, it was fun. It was such an enjoyable book. I loved it. So the Woman's Prize for Fiction, I read The Thousand Ships by Natalie Hayes, and I liked it. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this was the different aspects that we got to see with the different POVs in the story. However, it was very broken, and I didn't like that part. And so it felt like a whole bunch of short stories trying to come together to be one story, and it didn't work structurally. Like, it just left you either wanting more, or it left you going, huh? Like, why did we go from this to that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it's about women who are left behind during the Trojan War. And so it's really interesting for the most part, but with it being so structurally strange, I had an issue reading it. A book with a family tree. I had written down And I Darken. I didn't read it in 2021, but I did read it very recently, and I didn't like it. And I'm not going to say I didn't like it. Like, it was the okayest book I think I've ever read. Like, there was nothing wrong with it. It was okay. Characters were okay. Plot was okay. Like, but there was nothing great about it. There was nothing good about it. It was just okay. Bestseller from the 90s. I wrote down The Thief, and I didn't read it, by Megan Whalen Turner. So, wah, wah. A book about forgetting. I read Recursion by Blake Crouch, which was a 5-star read for me until the repetitive ending. When it came down to the repetition at the end, it knocked it down a full star for me because I'm not a huge fan of repetition. And so I ended up just not liking the ending of the book and almost not liking the book because of the way it ended. A book seen on a friend's bookshelf, that would be House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I didn't like that one either. It was one of those books that was okay. There was nothing wrong with it. No, this one had flaws. But it was more the relationship that was established in the book that I didn't care for, which kind of made the book pointless to read because that's what it's based on. And even though there were other elements outside of the relationship that we get to explore, we didn't explore enough of it. And sometimes we explored way too much of something irrelevant. And so I got bored with it, and it's like a 900-page book or something like that. And Next, we had a locked room mystery, and I read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I really enjoyed this book. I don't know why I enjoyed this book, because it's so far outside of my reading taste. I shouldn't have liked this book, but I really enjoyed the setup of the body hopping. That's all I'm going to say, because otherwise it would be very spoilery, but I really enjoyed that aspect, and it made it so entertaining to watch that happen and to figure out what was actually going on in the end. It was pretty cool, pretty cool. A book set in a restaurant. See, we have all of these contemporary things and things that I don't necessarily like in books, and this PopSugar year sucked. With the Fire on High. I did not like this book. I gave it 3 stars. Wasn't my taste. Shouldn't have read it. Did it for the PopSugar challenge. Regretted it. I was able to actually point some other people in the direction of this book, though, so wasn't a total loss, because the people that I recommended it to actually really enjoyed it, but it was their taste, so it made sense that they liked it, but wasn't my taste, and I didn't like it. A book with a black and white cover, Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I gave it 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it, and I was very eager to pick up the second book, but I did like the first book of the Grishaverse. I thought it was pretty good, and then I read the second one. I didn't like that one. So that has nothing to do with my PopSugar challenge, but just so you know, I haven't moved on to the third one. Didn't like the second one, but the first one was pretty good. Indigenous author, I read My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I did like this one. However, I have ADHD, and the character in this book has ADHD, and oh my goodness, was it a trip to read this book. I almost had a panic attack reading this book because the ADHD is so prevalent in the telling of this story. It was chaos. Utter, sheer, complete chaos. Same title as a song, Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill, and I didn't like it. No, actually, this book was okay. What I didn't like about it was the shock value. I really think that it was overdone, and Joe Hill is a good enough writer. He does not need to rely on shock value as much as, some authors might, but I didn't like that aspect of it. And so it kind of boiled down to not liking the book because of that, but everything else was done really well. So my passion. Now, this is one prompt that changed time and time again because I was getting mad. I was getting mad that I couldn't find any books that fit my passion. DNF'd 3 in an attempt to try and fill this prompt until I landed on vampires. And yes, that is a very weird thing to pick as my passion, but if you knew me, you would know vampires are a passion of mine, and I can't resist them. I love them, and I loved Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was the most brilliant vampire book I had read, period. And I am looking forward to seeing where this series goes. Body positivity. I didn't even try to fill this slot because I read sci-fi and fantasy, horror, and historical fiction. There's no such thing as body positivity in these categories. And I got very tired of trying to fulfill contemporary prompts. So I didn't even try. I had one to watch there at the beginning, and then I heard that it's not body positive. Like, there's a lot of body shaming in it. And I'm like, okay, well, if the one that I thought was going to be fun is just going to be like trashing big girls, I have no interest. And again, yeah, like the contemporary prompts in this were ridiculous, and I really got tired of trying to fulfill them. A book on a BLM reading list, I had Dread Nation. I also have Deathless Divide on this list because I really thought I would blow through both of them, and I just never got to them. And so Dread Nation will come up in my 2022 PopSugar reading challenge, but there was no reason why I didn't get to this one other than time and me thinking I could fit it in at the end of the year, and I didn't get to it. A book that is a genre hybrid. I went with Eden by Tim Leben, and it is a sci-fi horror, and I really enjoyed it. I did end up taking this book back to the buy-sell trade though, because it's one of those that once you read it, you know the ending, and it's not really one that is one you want to reread over and over. It's that once you found out what was going on, you're good. You figured it out, and it was a good book, and you liked it, and we're moving on. A book set outdoors. I read The Forest Queen by Betsy Cornwell. I didn't like it. Oh, I heard female Robin Hood with a full female cast, and I was sold. This book relied a lot on shock value. This book relied a lot on abuse of women, and I didn't care for it. A book with something broken on the cover. I read An Exit Strategy by Martha Wells, and you guys know I really dig Murderbot, so there's nothing really much to say because these are short stories that all revolve around the same Murderbot, and the plot is the same throughout all of them. I say that makes it sound really boring. It's not repetitive, it's just a continuation. Because they're novellas, you're not really getting the full story up front. In one book, it continues on. A Muslim American author, I read A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir, which is the final book of that series, and I can't think of the name of it now. An Ember in the Ashes. Ember in the Ashes. And I loved it. I thought it was really good. I think I may have given this book 5 stars, and the reason being, what Sabaa Tahir does in the final book of this series is almost unseen in the way she ties all of the threads together from book 1 to book 4. And I was so thoroughly impressed with the way that she did that I couldn't not give it 5 stars. Like, I had to give it 5 stars because the writing was so impressive. A book by an anonymous author I didn't try. A book with an oxymoron in the title. These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which I do believe I gave 4.5. I really liked it. I really liked the Shanghai setting. I really liked that we delved into the communists coming in and making life harder for these already destitute people. And I really liked the Romeo and Juliet aspect of it too, because it wasn't this burning romance. It was more we used to be friends, now we're not friends. We've kissed before, we had a relationship before, but it didn't work out, and I still like you, but we have things we have to get done. So while I might like you and I might want you, we have work to do. And so I really like that aspect of it. Do I think it will go further in the next book? Yeah, I do. I really do. But for the purposes of that book, I was really impressed with the way she was able to rein it in and still have that Romeo and Juliet feel to it. Do-overs, fresh starts. I read The Bone Maker by Sarah Beth Durst. I really, really enjoyed this book, and I actually started to pick up Sarah Beth Durst books after reading this. I'd heard a lot about the Queens of Renthia, and I hadn't picked it up at that point, but when I finished The Bone Maker, I had to. I love her writing style. Absolutely love her writing style. And she is very, very imaginative, because there is not the same magic utilized in The Bone Maker as there is in Race the Sands. There's not the same magic used in either of those that's used in the Queens of Renthia. So it's very cool to watch her create a different type of magic system in a different world. And so I really enjoyed The Bone Maker. I really liked the characters that she created. I really like the scenario that we have, because it's so different. We have a woman who's trying to reawaken her dead husband and has to recruit some people from her past to see it done. And it's really cool the way it plays out. Like, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but I really liked it, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Magical realisms, I had to change this one quite a few times too. Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. You guys know I really like practical magic, so of course I want to read the prequels to it. And this one was good. I will say that I didn't like the writing style with this story. I would have liked a closer examination of the life that led to practical magic, but you know, it is what it is. I think I gave it 3.5 stars, maybe even 4, but I do think that the writing style hurt it a bit. Set in multiple countries, I read The Golem and the Genie by Helene Weckler. I enjoyed this book. It is very much outside what I normally read, but I really liked the concept of the golem and how she came about, how she started to live her life, and how her and the genie found each other. And again, it was really, really good. So I would recommend that one. I do hope to pick up the second book, because the second book recently came out, and continue on with the golem and her journey. A book set somewhere I'd like to visit. I read Cersei by Madeline Miller. 5-star. Love that book. I get the hype around Madeline Miller. I get why everyone loves Cersei. It's very, very good. Very much worth the hype. A book by a booktuber. I read Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis, and I loved it. I have a new obsession with aliens as cinnamon rolls, and I need more of them in my life. Enough said, right? Enough said. Actually, I have Truth of the Divine on my TBR cart. It's staring at me over here. And I just did a 5-star predictions video. I don't know which one of the videos is going to go up first. I didn't put it on there because I have a feeling it's going to go in a direction I don't want it to go. But I still might enjoy it. So I don't know. I'm a little in the air about where I might land with Truth of the Divine, but I still really, really enjoyed Axiom's End. A book with Q, X, or Y in the title. I read The Queen of Blood by Sarah Beth Durst. I love the Queens of Renthia. That's all I can say. I really liked this first book because I really liked the setup. The setup of this story is really cool. I really think the Queens of Renthia is a great series, and I really think the first book of this series is a good setup. It's not boring. We're not getting a whole bunch of info dumping. Sarah Beth Durst writes clean and crisp, and she really lays out things for you in a way that gives you the information without being overwhelming, and I really like that. A book featuring 3 generations. I do believe I squeaked this in right at the end of December. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I really loved this book. This was another 5-star read for me, and I really love Naomi Novik's writing. It's really, really good. And I have gone back and forth on this a couple of times and whether or not I like her writing. I do. I don't like the tropes she chooses. That's what it is. I don't like the way she writes the tropes. But Spinning Silver was pretty trope free, or tropes I don't like free. And I love stories of the Fae, so this just kind of tugged at me. But it's not focused on the Fae per se. It's focused on these 3 women and how they are living their lives trying to survive in a man's world and making it. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of the story a lot. As I said, Deathless Divide would be coming up on this list. Here it is, and I did not read it. A book in a different format than what I normally read. So, of course, this would be ebook because I don't read ebooks. They give me a headache. But I did actually have the e-arc for this, and I did read it on ebook. And that would be Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This has one of the cutest romances I've ever read. And there is a miscommunication trope in this that just drives me nuts. But I loved this book. I gave it 4.5 stars because of the miscommunication trope. It would have been 5 stars without it. But just know if you're going into this, it's not very much of a space opera. It is actually pretty heavy romance. And so if you're looking for a space opera, I would say no. If you're looking for a romance, I would say definitely read this book. A book with less than 1,000 reviews, I read The Last Watch by J.S. Dews. Now, this book was a breakneck pacing book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it, but there was a couple of very convenient plot devices that happened in this book that I was just like, what? Why? Why do we need this to happen? Why does this person always get to solve the problem? And it did make me a little bit annoyed. So it probably would have been 4 stars if that wasn't an issue. I enjoyed it. It was a fun ride. And I do plan to read the next one. And I do have the next one. So yeah. A book my best friend would like. And I read Dark Dawn by J. Kristoff. You guys know Nevernight is one of my favorite series, and yeah, I really liked it. 5 stars. A book about an artist, and I read An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. I actually thought that book was really sweet, really cute. I don't think it's anything really special, but it's one of those, like, if you like the Fae, read it. Read it because it's cute. Read it because the writing is good, and read it because it's a little bit different story than what we normally get. And I enjoyed it. A book that everyone has read but me. I read The Lies of Lockemora by Scott Lynch, and I am excited to continue this series. I did give this book 4 stars, and I didn't quite get the bromance that everyone talks about with Locke and Jean, but I did find that romance in a different book. Bromance. Okay, a past challenge. I chose The 7 Deadly Sins and read Wrath by John Gwynne. That book made me cry. I loved it. It was 5 stars. Probably one of the best books I've ever read. Ruin and Wrath make The Faithful and the Fallen one of my favorite series of all time, and Ruin and Wrath are probably 2 of the best books I've ever read, bar none, period. Longest book on my TBR. Seven Thieves by Neil Stephenson. Guess what? It's on my PopSugar challenge for 2022. I didn't read it. Shortest book on my TBR was The Test by Sylvain Nouvelle. This is actually a short story, so it was crazy. It was good. I really enjoyed it, but man, it's messed up. So if you want something messed up and short to read, definitely pick it up. Prettiest cover, All the Tides of Fate by Adeline Grace. This is the second book to All the Stars and Teeth. And I did like this book. I didn't like it as much as the first one. We focus much more on the romance in the second book, which I said, I don't mind, but it did kind of take a weird turn in focusing on the romance because we were so focused on her getting her crown for so long that I really feel like that wasn't the direction I wanted the story to go, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I still gave it 4 stars. Ugliest cover was Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. I read the first book. The Theft of Swords is a bind-up of 2. And I read the first book. I liked it. It was okay. I wasn't really impressed with it, but I do plan to continue the series and see how I like them because they're pretty short. And Michael J. Sullivan, I just don't think his writing style is for me. It's a little bit too... I want to say young, but he doesn't write young adult books. So that just seems a little... It seems like the wrong word. But immature maybe? Like the writing is not... It's not really like elevated. Well, you guys can see what I read on a typical day. And so I just never feel like his writing is up to par. Book that has spent the longest amount of time on my TBR would be Ill Wind by Rachel Kane, and I still haven't read it, and that's not on my PopSugar for 2022. I will probably at least pick up Ill Wind and decide if this is a series that I want to continue in 2022, but I didn't get around to reading it. Book that I meant to read in 2020, that would have been No Thick Gloss. And how I put this book off, I do not know, because No Thick Gloss was one of my favorite books of last year. And I absolutely love the writing style. Essa Hansen is, she's so great. She's great as a person too. I have been able to talk to her since reading No Thick, and I had a little fangirl moment when she showed up. So it was pretty funny. But yes, No Thick Gloss was one of my favorite books of last year. It's one of my favorite sci-fi reads that I've ever read. Keep in mind, I am a baby sci-fi reader, but I think the pacing of this book is great. I think the characters are great. I think the plot is great. I'm rereading this book right now. I'm already rereading it because, one, I want the details of No Thick to be fresh in my mind when I pick up Azura Ghost, but I just love this book, so I have no problem rereading it. Book I associate with my favorite person or people. Spoiler alert by Olivia Dade. I've talked about this a couple of times and how I really think this reflects fan fiction society very, very well. I do think the culture around fan fiction can be very much like what this book showcases. And I'm very open about being a fan fiction writer. I don't feel like I have anything to hide. I don't really try to hide things. So it's really funny to me to see this in a book form because I'm like, oh, that's my life. That's my life. That's my life. And my life is not often reflected in books because of what I choose to read. So that was really cool to see. And I actually plan to continue this series because the way that she depicts fan fiction culture and society, I think is really, really cool and really interesting. And you can tell that she's been there. She's done the things. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to pick up more from her. Random choice that I totally regret. totally regret the X Hex by Erin Sterling or Rachel Hawkins. She's writing under a pseudonym as Erin Sterling. It's sucked. I really, really didn't like this book. And I think part of it was I went in thinking paranormal romance, not straight romance. And so I was expecting a lot more paranormal elements to come through. And when it didn't, nothing hit right for me. And so I think that if I had gone in thinking this was a straight romance with a little bit of paranormal sprinkled in, then I probably would have liked it a little bit more. But everything about this book was very surface level. So I don't know how it passed the Book of the Month test, because Book of the Month, they kind of scour through a lot of books to come up with the cream of the crop. I don't know how this made the cut. I will be just perfectly honest with you. I don't know how this one made the cut. Former DNF, City of Brass. I am going to be adding that to my TBR for next year, but you guys will see another video in where I will mention City of Brass later. And the free book was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. As I talked about whenever I talked about An Enchantment of Ravens, I really liked Sorcery of Thorns because I just like the writing style, and I really like enemies to lovers. That's one of my favorite tropes in romance, and there's a romance in it, but it's not heavy. And so I really enjoyed the flirtation that occurred with these characters. I just thought it was a really, really good book. But that is my PopSugar challenge for 2021. Be looking out for my PopSugar challenge for 2022, because I will be making a video for that. And like, subscribe, do all the fun things. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!